Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursdays Behind the Screen. I am Jane, your GM. We are going to be talking about game design, answering questions. That's what the show is about. We are here to just talk about gaming, game design, game development, adventures, reviews, the whole nine yards. If you have never been here before, I am JM, and I am a game designer. I stream games on Twitch. I develop games for Pelgrane. So today we're doing the second part of a campaign clinic. We got a bunch of great questions from our patrons. If you are a member of the Iconic patronage over at patreon.com/iconic production, you get to join our Discord channel. We have a very active community. We talk about games basically 24/7. We talk about our Torg game. We talk about the Iconic podcast where we do Gumshoe. We're doing a season on Gumshoe. We're doing Trail of Cthulhu this Sunday, and I'm very excited about that. Tune in next Tuesday for a big announcement for the Iconic production channel. We're going to be announcing our new stream next week. I'm very excited about that. Tonight is our kickoff. It's a very secretive thing at this point, though, but know that we're going to be posting a lot on our Instagram page. We're going to be posting a lot on our Behind the Screen. We're going to be talking about it a lot on the Torg game as well on Tuesday night. So I'm very excited about this. We've got a new show that we're launching. We've got some people who are in the chat who will be part of that. Rook, good to see you, buddy. As always, Phantom, always good to see you. And Bob, just love having you here on the channel. Thank you to both Bob and Matthias who became new patrons this month. So it is good to have you both as part of the community. So we're getting into Campaign Clinic. It's just a time where I take a week and we talk and answer questions. So we're going to answer some questions that come from the Discord patronage. And here we go. So the first two are from Mr. Bob Crumb, at Mr. Bob Crumb in the chat. He has some more 5th edition questions that we're going to talk about. So the first one is conditional immunity. So this is a stat block from Zugtmoy, which is just fun to say. And if you notice that Zugtmoy is immune to poison and bludgeoning and piercing and slashing from non-magical attacks. So the question was, well, what does that mean? What happens if there is a poison weapon? And this is a pretty simple game design thing that 5th edition has put in. Basically, everything before a semicolon is unconditional. So Zugtmoy is always immune to poison. Everything after the colon or semicolon is a conditional immunity. So she's immune to bludgeoning and piercing and slashing from non-magical attacks. Sometimes you may also see it from non-magical attacks that are not from adamantine weapons, right? If it's a non-magical attack but is an adamantine weapon, it ignores their damage immunity. So the question Bob had is, well, what happens if they get hit with a magical sword that also does poison damage? Well, so there's two ways this could go. If you just have a flaming green sword that does all poison damage, even though it's magical, you're out of luck. She's immune to poison. But more typically what you'll see in 5th edition is, it's a long sword that does a D8 plus whatever damage, and then also does a D6 poison damage. So in that case, you split up the 2 points of damage, right? You have the main damage is taken if it's a magical weapon, full damage applies, and you ignore the poison damage. Now this is the same thing for damage resistances. If you're attacking with a flaming sword that does the base longsword damage and then a set die of damage for fire, you only factor in her resistance to the fire. So I hope that helps, Bob. The other one you had is about reach. So the way reach works is it was fun to actually do a lot of this research because reach has worked so differently, so many different ways across the years in D&D. My favorite version of reach was in 3rd edition, where you had this feat that you could give to monsters called Large and in Charge, where if they made an attack of opportunity, it stopped your movement and pushed you back to your starting square. So I would feel, we had a squadron of ogres with pole arms and Large and in Charge, and they wrecked They just wrecked stuff. So essentially, Reach just says, Reach is on page 147 of the player's handbook. Essentially, Reach just says it is as far as it's the squares that cover your attacks of opportunity. So normally you only threaten the 5 squares around you. Now, Reach increases that, so you also determine your reach for opportunity attacks with a reach weapon. So if you have a reach of 10, your outer edge of your threatened area is 2 squares or 10 feet away from you. If you're an ogre and have a reach of 10 and are wielding a reach weapon, they stack. So I think that would be 15, because if you have a reach of 10 and then you have a 20, reach of 10, reach weapon adds 5 feet. But the thing to remember about this, and this is why I put the polearm master feat up, because Bob was asking about this. If I have a reach of 10 or 20 feet, people can still run around in that zone, right? It's only when you leave the reach area, the threatened area, that the attack of opportunity goes off. So if I've got a reach of 10 feet, someone could technically take a 5-foot step away from me and not provoke an attack of opportunity. However, what Polearm Master does is it adds a second component to that. It's not just when they leave your threatened area, it's when they enter your threatened area as well. So essentially, what allows you to what it does is Reach creates a bubble that seems to be safe for enemies, right? Because they don't have to be in melee with you, but they can move around in that square without provoking attack of opportunities. Same way that if you only had a reach of 5 feet, I could move around you without provoking attacks of opportunities. Yeah, or Sentinel. Sentinel's also a great one. Polearm Mastery says that when they enter your threatened area, they also take an attack of opportunity. So that's where the key difference is. If I rush up to you and you have Polearm Mastery, you thwack me as I come running in. Now, somebody may say, well, it creates a little safe bubble of, space around you. I can run around you. That doesn't matter. One, you can still hit people, right? It's not like there's a minimum distance with a polearm. In fact, if you look at the Polearm Mastery, you get that free bonus action to thwack them with the other end. But where Polearm Mastery really shines is, say you have 2 people with Polearm Mastery. Well, now you have a formation fighting, because as they're moving around one guy, they're probably entering and exiting the reach distance of the fighter or the paladin to the right and the left. So it actually mechanically works really well with the idea of, right, polearms work best in formation. So that's our little discussion of Reach. Bob, hopefully that is helpful as we kind of move through this. I know it is rude, but formation fighting, right, historically dominates. And if you have a couple of people with formation or polearm mastery in a group, you are, yes, and with a battle master, I love the battle master fighter in 5th edition. All right, so Ben Feehan had a question. How do I deal with campaign prep burnout? So this is real. And I'm gonna take a step back and go to a Harvard study about friendship. So everyone has a friend number, is what I think it was Harvard. And this friend number is how many close friends you can actually have. Doesn't matter. The number varies from person to person, but you can really only maintain so many close friendships. If you add someone new, it will eventually push someone out, because your brain can only maintain that level of intimacy with so many people. So I think the campaign burnout number is like that as well. Some people can run 1 game a week, and that is their campaign load. They can play in more, but they can only generally run 1 campaign a week. At my craziest, I was running 5 campaigns a week. And that was too much. 3 to 4 campaigns is usually where I can shine. And for me, that helps with the campaign prep burnout. I do most of my campaign prep, and I think I've talked about this, at the front end. I read the rules, I get my notes, I understand how the world works. And then from week to week, I tend to use that consequence list that I talked about. So in one, that helps. If I can't come up with something to do, there's generally something the players have screwed up mightily that I can just say, well, they're dealing with this. The other thing that helps me, and I know Bob, you and I have talked about this as it relates to art, that sometimes you hit a block on one thing, so you jump over to something else and let your subconscious work on art piece one. It's the same way for me with campaigns. If I'm struggling figuring out what I want to do with my Torg game, I'll set the Torg game aside and focus on the Jackals game for a bit. Yeah, you sleep on it. It's amazing to me how many times I will pop awake in the middle of the night, reach over, type out a note on my phone because my subconscious has gone, this is what you do with Torg. And I'm like, oh, that is what I do with Torg. So I think avoiding burnout is kind of three things. One, jump to something else creative if you can. Whether that's reading a book, playing a video game, watching a movie, doodling, working on something else. Let that part of your brain that is your campaign planning part rest for a bit. Two, know what your max game limit is. If you're constantly coming into game night because you have 2 games a week and you are super stressed, one of those games may need to be handed off to someone else. And the other thing is, this took me a while to realize, it's okay to cancel a game. It's okay to cancel a game and not do anything. It's okay to say, hey, tonight I really just need to play a board game. There's a lot of pressure put on GMs, and we talk a lot about player agency and making sure the players are having fun, and that's all true. You are a member of that group and of that table. If you need a break, you need a break. And here's the thing, unless someone is paying you to play in your games, you don't actually owe the group anything. You are doing this out of the kindness of your heart. You're doing this because you love the game. You enjoy the people you're playing with. You are doing this because this is something you enjoy. And players need to understand that sometimes you're just going to need to take a night off to recharge, to bring your A game next week. Last night, my Jackals game, which I really love, or I just couldn't make it. I got sick. And my players were like, yeah, no, we understand this. That's great. How do you get that across to the group? Well, I mean, you mean aside from flipping a table and saying I don't owe any of you anything? I think there's just ways to explain that and just say, hey, I mean, Bob, you know me. I've been saying talk to your players for years. It's sort of become passé in the RPG world of just saying, oh, talk to your players. Yeah, no, it's true. I do think there are times where you just need to be like, guys, we're gonna play. I'd say Catan, but nobody wants to play Catan with me. Mainly because I don't like Catan. That could be a whole nother episode. I know, heresy for board game players. I've just never found Catan interesting. Hey, we're gonna play Lords of Waterdeep tonight. Hey, we're gonna watch a movie tonight. The other thing that you can do is there's a really great book by Matt Finch called The Tome of Adventure Design. You can get it on. I'll put the link in the show notes for this episode because I think you can get it on Amazon and on DriveThruRPG, and I know they just kickstarted a 3rd version of it. But it's just a book of random tables. Just roll up some ideas. Sometimes what you need to get through a creative block is ideas so bad or random that your brain recoils from it and goes, well, I should actually do X. Yeah, Rook is right. Like, I mean, whether you're talking about, Sabbath, like biblically, or you're just talking about limits, like you're not a machine. You are not, to use an example, because Bob got me hooked on this game, you're not Elden Ring. You're not available 24/7 whenever somebody wants to sit down and play the game. You slide aside. when people talk about professional dungeon mastering, there's this there's sort of a recoil from it, right? Why should I charge for what I do for fun or for free? Why should people pay? Why should I pay someone to be a dungeon master? Let's be honest. Most games run 2 to 4 hours. If you went to see a movie, you're looking at between 10 and $20, not counting snacks, for a passive entertainment. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you know that hundreds of people worked on this thing for hundreds of hours to bring this. You as a DM are putting in at least 2 to 4 hours. That's assuming you do no prep and you just run with it. Like, just totally improv. If you put even like 1-to-1, you're prepping for you're putting 4 to 8 hours a week in that your players probably aren't. Your players probably aren't thinking that much about the game between sessions. Maybe they're thinking about it for a half hour or an hour. But in general, you're putting the lion's share of the prep in. It is okay to say, I cannot do this week. For my own mental health, for my own physical health, for my own just anxiety, right? DM anxiety is a real thing. If you go into a game and you don't feel ready for it, just take a hiatus, do something fun with the group. Or maybe, if one of your players pushes back on it, like, hey man, I really was looking forward to, playing RPGs tonight. Can't you pull it together? Be like, cool. Why don't you run a one-shot? There's nothing that says that you have to be the person who's always providing the content in a campaign. Ideally, like one of the greatest experiences I had in role-playing was in my high school and college years, we played a lot of Rifts. And I was fortunate enough that out of the group of about 12 people, 8 of them were Rifts GMs. And so literally we had sort of a West Marches style, hey, who can run a game this weekend? What character levels should we bring? And we had this sort of pantheon of characters that sort of moved in and out, but no one was on the hook for maybe more than one adventure a month, unless you were crazy like me and then you were running multiple adventures a month. But that's how it works. And yeah, like if you are a player, show your GM appreciation. Bring them their favorite whiskey, bring them their favorite beer, bring snacks. On National GM's Day, send them a gift certificate to Drive Through RPG. Show them that you appreciate. Get the group together and pitch in for the next book that releases for the game that you're playing, so that the GM is not just bearing the temporal and the mental toll, but they're also not having to bear the financial burden. Maybe toss out, hey, why don't we plan on doing a game night, or let me run something. There are ways to help encourage your GM to step away and have that rest. All right. I mean, we got a lot of questions. So I'm going to answer one of Rook's now because he's in there. How do you make critical hits of any sort memorable than just doubling the dice? All right. I have a super simple answer for this, and it is a product-based answer. So I'm gonna put the links in the show notes. But Paizo sells a critical hit and a critical fumble deck. And essentially, I use that for 5th edition. I use that basically any D20 game. I use it for what else do I use it for? I use it for 13th Age. Basically, each card has it's like magic, melee, ranged, unarmed, and then alchemy because there are potions. And essentially, what I do is I play with those decks and we draw a card. I give the table the option. Are we going to play with the deck or without it? If we play with the deck, the bad guys get to draw from it too. But essentially, every card has a random, like, usually it'll say, like, I would say 70% of the cards do double damage and something else. But some of them will do triple damage. Some of them will do normal damage, but maybe you start bleeding. And on the card, it gives you, like, again, 4 or 5, here's an additional effect for the critical hit. And they're usually minor upscales or downscales, but it adds some randomness and it adds some really fun descriptions. If you're playing in D100 games, they have tons of critical hit tables. That is a staple of D100 games, like the Warhammer critical hit tables or the Zweihander wounding tables. Those are amazing. But yeah, Rook, I love random decks. Critical hit and fumble deck from Paizo are a place that I would start if you want to add something more for the critical hit decks. Another product that I really love that I don't know that I've talked about, I don't know if I have. Oh, here it is. This also helps with campaign burnout. This is the NPC Card Generator, and it was done by Andreas Walters. It's actually 8 decks of cards, about this big. Each card has unique art on it. And when I'm coming up with NPCs, a lot of people are like, how do you come up with NPCs? Each card, you draw one from each deck. So like this is a trait card that says this person has unique eyewear. And they're beautifully done cards. They're actually pretty good quality as well. And there are 8 decks, again, each with a different component to it. So they like NPC relationships, personalities, quirks, secrets, traits, names, goals, and professions. You draw one card from each, and suddenly you have a very deep NPC. I'm all about random generators to kind of help get past mental blocks, at least for me. So again, Tome of Adventure Design, Paizo decks, and the non-player cards. I'll put all of those links in the show notes when this goes live on YouTube, so that if you guys are interested, you can follow them. They're affiliate links. I get a little bit of a reward if that goes through financially. So if you see this and these sound interesting, click on the link, go check them out. I think we've got about time for one more. Let's do Becca's. So Becca had a question. Do you ever have the problem of players getting rid of the big bad far too easily, so you have to figure out who the real big bad is? Any tips for stalling players who want to storm the castle too early? Well, those are sort of 2 separate questions. For me, I have two things that I try to do in RPGs. One, I never show the big bad unless I'm ready for him to, unless I'm okay with him dying. So keeping a threat off screen as long as possible builds a lot of tension. Throwing minions and lieutenants and troops, all who work for this guy, helps scale up, sending out rumors. Like it's the John Carpenter mode of horror building, or right, you don't want to show the monster too early. You want to ramp up the tension. So there's that. There's also the thing that like I tend not to have an idea who the big bad is in some types of games, especially sandbox games. I will let the players figure that out. Mainly because they may find some other bad guy far more interesting than the guy that I had, I was going to prop up as the big bad guy. There's always the thing of, well, he was actually working for done. All right, you can do that, but after the 7th or 8th time, it sort of feels old. So I would say either don't keep them off screen for as long as possible, because the temptation is to put them in front of the group. If you put them in front of the group, you need to be okay with them dying. It's the problem that's existed ever since Deities and Demigods came out for D&D, which was a lot of alliteration there, which I really liked. The idea that if you put stats on something, stats will be used to kill them. There's always I use this in Torg a lot because, especially in the Nile Empire, it's very thematic. If you have a benefit in the game, bennies, possibilities, that fate points, that sort of thing, they make a dramatic escape. You could always try and give your villain an escape route, a hidden switch on the altar that opens to a drop chute. make it believable and make it within their action economy to do. Don't let them just run away because you want to. A couple of times, if you defer that gratification when they finally kill the big bad, that's going to be awesome. If you do it too often, it can feel stale and sort of passé. As for storming the castle too early, well, this may come as no shock to anyone who's gamed with me long enough, but I don't scale encounters for the group. I scale them for what is believable for the world and the narrative and the story. So if the group figures out that Karnak the Necromancer is the big bad and want to go take them out, and I've set up that Karnak is a level 14 Necromancer and has undead guards running through his castle, and you guys are level 3, well, chips fall where they may. One thing we talk about a lot in gaming is never robbing a player of agency. I totally agree with that. But also, agency means that choices have consequences. And that if you never have the risk of death from your choices, do you really have... Was it really a choice that you made? If the GM suddenly makes Karnak the Necromancer level 5 because you guys are only level 3 and we really don't want to kill you, well, that's not respecting the player's choice. That's sort of softballing it. So I'm okay when when I do something stupid in a game and the GM is like, you tried to kill the Crimson Bat. You're dead, right? Okay, I made a choice and I live with it, but I know that my choice was real because it led to an outcome that I didn't expect. I saw this and this quote has kind of stuck with me. Someone said it somewhere online, so I can't attribute it. It is not mine. That is all I will say. But if you make it to the end of the campaign, got everything you wanted, and won every fight, you did not necessarily have agency. None of your choices mattered because you got everything you wanted in the way that you wanted it, and you arrived at the end with no cost. That's not a good story. It's a railroad, as Bob just said. So there are about 4 more questions. I'm going to wait till we get about 6 or 8. I hope you guys are enjoying the campaign clinic. I would like to do it multiple times in the near future. It's been a lot of fun to chat about. It's always good to see everyone in chat. Phantom and Rook and Bob, thank you for joining us. To everybody who's watching on YouTube, I try to respond to all of the comments that we have. I really enjoy this. This is sort of the thing that I wanted to have in behind the screen, sort of a back and forth conversation and a discussion of things that are cool and interesting and maybe puzzling in gaming. So thank you to everybody who showed up. Thank you to everybody who asked questions. Becca, Ben Feehan, Restar Ben, Mr. Furious. I will get to your question the next time. Bob and Rook. It's been a pleasure chatting with all of you. And again, we will be back on Tuesday with more Behind the Screen. If you are free on Sunday night at 8 p.m. Central, we're doing our review of Trail of Cthulhu's Hideous Creatures and Eternal Lies campaign. If you like Cthulhu and want to see some interesting rule sets for Cthulhu, let's jump on the Iconic Podcast on when we do it on Sunday, and I'll be back on Tuesday with more Behind the Screen and more Torg. I think we fixed the sound issues in the studio, so thanks to everybody who commented on that. This last episode of Torg was one large fight, but the best part about Torg is they're super interesting when it happens. And so I think we had a lot of time. Thank you to Mr. Furious and to Becca, who saved the life of Kowalski. If you join one of our streams, we actually hand out possibility to the audience so that they can spend it on villains or on the Storm Knights as the adventure is rolling on. So 2 of our chat were able to help Kowalski survive what should have killed him. And so that was awesome. The chat gets to impact the story as we play, which will also happen in the new stream that we will be doing. Again, I will be discussing that on Tuesday. We'll have our big announcement for that. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. It has been a pleasure stepping behind the screen with you guys today. I will see you all next week. Have a good one.